Dyno Bob here. Hey, this is going to be the second part of a multi-series on this 2013 GT500. You might have saw the first clip we made where we talked a little bit about the driving experience and just exactly what we were going to do with this car. We're not trying to build the fastest 13 right here. What we're trying to do is enhance the driving experience and still look really factory and not break the bank. So let's kind of talk about what we're going to do with this car. We'll go over the things again. But first I'd like to touch on one thing. Now I'm not going to do it to this particular car, but this is a deal that we do to a lot of the guys that run these competitively at the racetrack or just looking for max power. Brian, go ahead and show them. Let's take a look at the aftercooler. And this is the same arrangement that they have in a 7, 8, 9. From the first one they made in 07 to this 13. You can see the aftercooler in this intake manifold. And what you don't see is that 25% of this intercooler is actually blocked off and not being used. What we found out by enlarging this and using the entire aftercooler, the guys are picking up mile an hour at the track. Even on the dyno they might see a few horsepower, but on the track, you know, they may pick up 2-3 miles an hour. So that's pretty exciting, and we do a lot of them. Now, Brian, let's look down and see a finished one of these. As you can see here, can you see it, Brian? Can you kind of see both of them? Mm-hmm. You can see how we cut that out. This is entirely cut out. These back holes are heli-arced in. The holes in here, like on the early Cobra, when that blower bypasses air at idle and park throttle, it was actually the warm air that they were bypassing. Well, in this newer design, it was blocked off so they could bypass cooler air. But on these race car ones here that we do, we just block them off. Flows more air and works perfectly. I do these in 2 stages. I'll do one where I just cut this wall back as hard as I can, and I'll retain this cool air bypass. And I recommend that for if you're going to drive it on the street. But you know, if you're looking for all out performance, and we'll go ahead and heli-arc these up, and you'll get one that looks like this. Also on these, what we'll do is we'll weld the roof of the injector boss, and what that allows me to do is to get in here and open this area up substantially and redirect the air at the head. So I just wanted to show you that. That's a pretty neat deal. We do a lot of them for the Cobra Jet race cars and road race type guys and stuff. But back on this project, let's start with the cold air intake system itself. This unit here, you know, on these 10s and newers, you had what looked like a muffler up here, and actually that's what it was, to quiet that supercharger sound. These superchargers are so loud when we run these on the flow bench, you literally have to plug your ears. It's piercing. So this goes a long way in that. So what we did is we flow tested this, and this was the smallest part, and it ended up flowing 1,385 CFM, which really isn't bad considering that the stock throttle body flows 1035. So actually this is flowing 300 CFM more than the stock throttle body, so I don't really see a restriction here. Also, we flowed the filter, and it flowed at 1457. And you'll notice they got a screen in the bottom of them. That is somewhat restrictive, but still this is outflowing the muffler part of these newer systems. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this car together with the mods we're going to talk about with the stock cold air intake system. We're going to run it without a tune. We're going to do some day logging. Then after that, we're going to go back with one of our own cold air intake systems. Now that one there, like I said, flowed 1385. This one will flow 2200 CFM. With the filter, it'll flow 1875. So basically, this will flow 500 more CFM. And we will test that when all said and done there at the very end. So let's talk a little bit about the throttle bodies on these sorts of cars. They retain the same throttle body from 07. And here it is. It flows 1,035, which heck, this This blower they got on there now flows nearly twice of what the throttle body does. So we know what the big restriction is. So anyway, this is a stocker at 1035. Now we do a Series 2 that actually flows 200 more CFM. It'll flow 1250 and pick up like 28 rear wheel, a stock one, which is really all an M122 will handle. But this blower is a TVS and flows substantially more than an M122. So it's going to want a much larger throttle body. But like I said, when we modify the stocker for the earlier GT500s, it's really all you need. So I do a Series 3 for a TVS blower, and this is what it looks like. And let's compare it to the stocker, since we know the throttle body is going to be our biggest restriction. I don't know how you're going to get this in the camera. How's that look, Brian? Good. But you see the one on the top we do, that flows 1443 CFM, which is pretty astounding. It actually flows more than a Whipple monoblade, which flows 1403. A lot of people find it somewhat hard to believe that dual throat will flow more than a single barn door type blade. But when you have a Venturi, especially two of them, it's going to speed the air up and increase the overall efficiency. So we do find this throttle body to flow the most CFM. It's going to produce the most horsepower, but also it's going to have tremendous drivability. A lot of guys with these cars, they start messing with throttle bodies because they are a good, simple horsepower gainer, but they end up with a lot of drivability and limp mode, going to limp mode type problems. The drive-by-wire has to specifically be set. The voltage is set. There's two voltages that are specific and need to be set, and we do that on a bench. So that is important. We'll go over that maybe on the next deal. But anyway, that's the one we're going to use there. The one advantage that this new car has with this new TVS blower is they make a super large plenum. And we found years ago that if we took the early style GT500, which is the oval, and we did some welding and we made what I call a teardrop shape. We made like 15 at the tire, and it was super effective on the M122 blowers and the TVS's. Well, as you can see, they took it a little further with the 13 and enlarged it a little bit more. We will take these small ones here and modify them to fit the 13s, believe it or not, with a little welding and massaging. Ford had these back ordered, so we've been doing quite a few of these. I think the price is $350. Is that right, Brian? $350? It's quite a bit of them. But we do those. So now we kind of talked a little bit about the cold air intake. Also, this car has a ram air, which is super neat, ramming into the cold air intake bucket there. I don't like it being shrouded. I talk about that all the time, but at least air is ramming in there, so I think that counter-reacts the shield. So we talked a little bit about cold air intake, the muffler, the airflow. We're going to step up to that Street King at the end. We're going to do larger throttle body. And we talked about the intake manifold, the after cooler. Here's a blower here. Can you pan over here, Brian? This is a blower here. Now we ported this to a stage 6, and what we've also did is we installed a 200,000 smaller upper pulley. The one that came on this car was a 265, which produced 12 pounds of boost and 605 rear wheel horsepower. This pulley is 200,000 smaller. It's a 245. It's going to make 2 more pounds of boost, so we should be at 14 pounds. But I do want to remind you that this car has Dynotech 1 7/8 headers, but it does have a 3-inch high flow catalytic converter. So we're not seeing everything we could really see out of this car. It does have converters, and you know, a high flow converter will only flow half as much as an open pipe. So a 3-inch open pipe flowing 900 CFM with a 3-inch high flow converter, you're only going to flow 450 CFM. So, you know, it's like flowing an inch and a half pipe. Pretty small for an 800 horse motor. Back again. I out-talked my video card, so we had to download that, regroup, get some batteries, and we're going again. But I think where I stopped was the catalytic converter. And I guess what I was trying to touch on at the end there was a 3-inch high flow converter is only going to flow as much air as an inch and a half pipe. And ultimately we're going to be trying to push 800 rear wheel horse, or I'm sorry, 700 rear wheel horse, which is 800 horsepower at the flywheel, through an inch and a half actual flow diameter. So, you know, some guys have to run cats. They can't run that off-road pipe. And I tell them a trick setup would be, let's say you come off your headers like on here, off your collector and Y into twin 3-inch converters back down to a 3-inch pipe. Then basically you're going to have your catalytic converters and you're going to have zero restriction. So that would be a super trick setup. I haven't seen it done, but I know that would be the neat deal for a guy that wanted to run the cats and safely run those high power levels. So that's a little bit about the catalytic converters, and let's touch on the spark plugs and the breather assembly here. Now these cars come, and the other ones come with a where's the spark plugs at? Let me see here. These are the ones I took out. They're Fumoco plugs. It's a standard plug, and we like to switch to this 7317 NGK plug. It's a little colder. It's an 8 on the heat range. It's actually the same plug they're running in Cobra Jet race car. Now they come out of the box gapped at 22, which is just too narrow for this application. So we're going to bump these up from 22 to 32. And we're going to put a little anti-seize on them. We're going to install them. And I got 7 of them installed there. You know, we were dying for some of these cars. Let me get the door there. Put the phone buzzing. You know, we were dying on these cars early on. We were taking the coil covers off to latch onto a coil wire to get the tap lead on the dyno jet. Well, we were having some blurps in there, and what we found out was the actual boost in this car, the pressure in the cylinder was actually lifting those coil packs up. So now what Kurt does is he actually gets in the wire loom over here and he just exposes one coil wire. That allows us to run this car with the coil covers on, and we eliminated that. So that was a pretty neat find. Kind of helped us on the tuning. Let's hit on the crank breather. Now these cars, all these supercharged cars, are set up with PCV systems on the right and left bank. I definitely want to run at least one breather, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this driver's side off and disconnect this electronic piece, which I had found no problem on the earlier cars. It doesn't throw a code or anything like this. We'll find out on the 13, but I don't suspect we'll have a problem. But you do want to keep these sort of items if you need to put this back on to get your inspection. You know, if you got this hooked back up, you got your stock holder intake and your cats on, you're going to breeze through your inspection, it'll be fine. But anyway, what we like to do is take this off, and they make breathers in 2 sizes, and what we'll do is we'll add a grommet here, which comes with our single or dual kits, and pop that in, and these are 2 breathers. You got a small one, and I like to run this 2x3-inch filter. Actually, the first Cobra Jet race car I had seen had 2 of the smaller ones. And that's kind of what the small one looks like. I like to run the bigger one. I'll put a little anti-seize on it, on the tube a little bit there, and it'll end up like that. So on our particular car, I'll actually run 2 on ours, but if you run the stock cold air intake system on this, the big one really isn't going to fit over there, but with our cold air intake system, the the one we're going to show later, the Street King version, it can run 2 filters, and I do like that. So that's where we're going to be with this. Now this car makes 605 at the rear tire, and the injector runs a 54-pound injector. This unit here. If you take our formula, we do a lot of injector upgrades, resizing, and they're called even flow injectors, and we do a lot of those. This injector actually has 16 discharge holes, which is twice the earlier model, and basically you're going to have the fuel conditioned to burn more efficiently. So I believe actually this car might make peak power at maybe 1.5–2 degrees less timing, which is favorable. And always when you add headers on a car like this, you're going to have to add 2 degrees of timing to see your peak power, which is usually 25 degrees. I think we're going to see this thing making peak power at 23 degrees because of this injector. So we'll have to see how that goes. And we can modify these injectors and probably get the flow up over 50% more, you know, for guys that need to do that. And when we do these injectors, we're only going to add fuel at open loop, so it's not going to affect your idle or your park throttle, which is really neat. When we do upsize them and get them to flow, you know, maybe 80 pounds, all you're going to have to do is trim through your map transfer function at wide open. It's not going to affect your drivability. You could put our resized injectors in there and start it up and drive your tuner. No, you know, you won't have to tow it, anything like that. So that's a super neat deal. But this 54-pound injector, if you do our formula and you multiply by 11, that's going to have 605 rear wheel potential at 85% duty cycle. And Ford had this figured out. I mean, a lot of people want bigger injectors than they really need. But, you know, for the best drivability, you just need the size you need. And Ford's got that in this car. It's making 605 at the rear tire. And I think what we're going to see here, I think with the port, the pulley, and the plugs and stuff, I think we're going to, and the throttle body, I think we're going to see 650 at the rear tire. I think when we tune it, we're going to see 675. And I think when we put the Street King cold air intake system on it, I think we may see 700 rear wheel horsepower and still have factory drivability and factory looks. And it's not, it won't break the bank. It's not an expensive deal. And I guess that about covers it. We just need to get the parts on here, run it on the dyno, and we'll see how this all goes. But we're excited. We got everything done. We're ready to go. And give us, maybe we'll have it running Friday. Today's Wednesday. So we'll see how it goes and get ready for the 3rd series in this 3 series part. So that'll be it for today.